Hello friends, I hope that this video finds you well. Although I realize that we are living in some pretty concerning times. And I know a lot of you are feeling a lot of different feelings, a lot of different emotions. And I want to honor all of those because I completely understand why you're feeling that way. We're certainly living in the meta crisis, right? Aren't we? I like what Jonathan Rowson says. He doesn't like to call it the poly crisis because that sounds like mini crisis of things. And that's certainly true. And if we talk about a perma crisis, it's the collapse of a system that no matter, as long as that system's in place, it's going to be a permanent crisis, right? So one's about systems, one's about things happening. But he likes to use the term meta crisis. I prefer that as well. And he demonstrates how the meta really talks about that space in between and going through and beyond. And so when you think about a meta crisis, you really get to the root of the problem. It's not a crisis of things or of a system, though it certainly is. The real crisis is a crisis of hearts and souls. And that's what I really want us to talk about on this video tonight. By the way, this is not going to be a short video. This is going to be a little bit longer video because I want it to be a learning video, not just for you, for me as well. We're all learning together. The other thing I want to say is we start off in this idea that I've talked about the meta crisis before. This video is not going to necessarily be about that. It's more about the need for us to understand that we can point to the crisis, we can point out all the troubles that we're having, and we can try to point to the things that cause those crises and never really get to the root of the real problem, which as Einstein said, and you've heard me say this quote many times before, but I want to make sure that I'm getting across what I mean when I use it. He said that we cannot solve the problems of the system that we're in with the same level of consciousness that created that system. Think about that for a moment. Einstein, who we attribute to math equations and quantitative formulas, really understood, if you really have ever read Einstein before, that the real problem was a problem of hearts and souls and consciousness and of sacredness. I just had a podcast interview a couple of days ago, and I'm always interested to see that when I use the word sacred, that people automatically start referring to it as if it's some disconnected thing from life. Oh, I want to get into the sacred. And they're like, well, I want to get my hands dirty in the soil. Let me tell you that sacredness is a connection to life. So stop thinking about sacred as being about angels and religion. It has nothing to do with that. Sacredness is about awe and wonder and enchantment. And when you separate sacredness from the ability to be engaged, then you separate ourselves from life itself. And it's so important for us to understand that in this time where community and maybe more importantly, communion is needed more than ever before between us, it's one of the hardest times to achieve it. We find ourselves not wanting to get into communion because we find ourselves in a place of despair or discouragement or disillusionment or fear and worry and doubt, and all of those things I completely understand. I feel them myself. The only thing that's ever going to cure that is going to be relationship, because relation is all that there ever is, and it's all that we have. Relationship to life, relationship to other humans, relationship to those we love and those we need to love, relationship to kin and cosmos and to consciousness is all relational. And everything that gets us beyond the meta crisis, not the poly crisis, not the permanent crisis, but beyond and through, is relationship. And so in this learning video, for you and for me, I would encourage you to find yourself in greater relationship. As much as it feels right now like that's the last thing you want, you just want things to get back to normal again. Well, the normal bus isn't coming back this way. And that's why the only way through is the meta crisis is, well, I just said it, through. It's meta, right? And so I want to share with you tonight in this longer video a couple of ideas relating to this concept of us needing to adopt a new philosophy. I was just reading a post on LinkedIn tonight, and it was a really good post. And it said, we had this meta crisis, we have this poly crisis going on. And it said, why? And it said, because we have a problem with the way we think. And then the question was like, why do we have a problem with the way we think? And basically it said, because our minds are filled up with too much other stuff. And I would posit that that's good, but let me yes and that and take it further. It's not just that our minds are filled up with too much stuff. It's that our minds, hearts, and souls need to adopt a new philosophy. We need a transformational philosophy. We're not filled up with too much stuff. We're filled up with the wrong way of seeing reality. And that includes me. That's why this learning video is for you and for me. We're both learning together here tonight. So now I know you can say to me, Frank, that sounds super egotistical. Everybody can have a different philosophy about life. Your philosophy is not the only philosophy that exists. I would say you're absolutely right. If I were to build a philosophy that were a cage or another room or another system, then if I were you, I'd run away from that. But what we need is a philosophy, as I already said, of relation and communion. One that understands that there is cooperation, collective, connective, collaboration, and co-creation at the heart of all reality. And that this philosophy that we are running our organizations and our governments and our systems and our societies by right now, that's based largely on competition, on siloing and separation, and the thought that there's always this progressive growth of things instead of hearts and minds, will not get us where we need to be. One of the greatest ways that I can sort of express this and help you and myself to understand is sometime back, easily 5 years ago, I'm not looking at the date on this article, but I wrote an article that I wish every organization that I've ever worked with, and ones that I haven't worked with yet, would read. And that is the idea, of course I could read it probably somewhere else too as well. That is the idea that what we need is not more development. We don't need more management. We don't need more governance. We need transformation. And you can hear that word as being a word that sounds like sacred or spiritual, or, transformation. Transformation is a natural element of all living things. Transformation is the pathway towards health and wholeness. Transformation is the pathway of relational emergence. Transformation is a natural outgrowth of cooperation, collaboration, collective, connective, co-creation. It's all about transformation. So now I'm going to hit you with something that you may know, or maybe you don't know, but something that sounds very much like organizational development. And that is the idea of the triple bottom line. Ever heard of it before? Well, it was actually created by a gentleman named John Elkington. I wrote this in my article on organizational transformation. And John was the person who coined the phrase triple bottom line. And he saw this view as being about much more than a way to create smarter and more ethical organizations, because as you know, the triple bottom line is basically profit, yes, but people and planet. Now, when you hear that, and you're working in organizational development or risk management or traditional governments, you might think, oh, profit is so important. We have to put that at the center. But, is there a way that we can sort of be ethical and sustainable, at least in a minimal way, and care about people and planet that will help our profit to increase? Because if not, then we're comfortable with single bottom line. But we're more than happy to adopt triple bottom line, because if it increases our profits, fantastic. And if at least it lets people think that we're trying to care about people and planet and increases our profits, that'll be even better. I hate to be cynical about things here a little bit, but listen, the systems we're in will co-opt the shit out of you. And it happens without you knowing that it's happening. So let me read to you what John Elkanny said when he found out that after a little while after launching the idea of triple bottom line and it being widely adopted, which is exciting, that he was sorry that it ever got adopted in the first place. Did you know this? He says the triple bottom line wasn't designed to be just an accounting tool. It was supposed to provoke deep thinking about capitalism and its very future. But many early adopters understood the concept as a balancing act, adopting a trade-off mentality. TBL's stated goal from the outset was systems change, pushing towards transformation of our capitalistic society. It was never supposed to be just an accounting system. It was originally intended as a genetic code. That's powerful. A triple helix of change for tomorrow's capitalism. In other words, TBL, he created that to get into the genetic code of the systems that are and completely transform them, to change them. But as with so many other things, colonial capital modernity co-opted it for its own purposes. Let me say that again. TBL, the triple bottom line, is not something that you can claim unless it is transforming you. I don't care if your company uses TBL. I guarantee you're using it wrong. And you're not using it the way that John Elkanny intended for you to do. Don't get upset about this. We're all in this together. Together with its subsequent variants, the TBL concept has been captured and diluted by accountants and reporting consultants, and fundamentally, we have a hardwired cultural problem in business, finance, and markets, whereas CEOs, CFOs, and other corporate leaders move heaven and earth to assure that they will hit their profit targets. The same is very rarely true of their people and planet targets. Clearly, the triple bottom line failed to bury the single bottom line paradigm. Period. Why am I reading that to you? Because I think it's so super important for us to understand right now that the reason that we're hurting is because we have been co-opted. And the co-opted has basically, a good metaphor maybe is capped off the spigot of life. Where life is supposed to be flowing through the spigot, this capitalistic governance of capitalism, corporations of capitalism, societies of capitalism, which is an outgrowth of colonial modernity, has capped life. I'm not anti-organization. I'm not anti-governance. I am anti anything that stops life. And it's time for us to stop mincing words about this. I'm in the business of helping organizations thrive. What does thriving mean? But as Dougal Hine has said, there is no more future to this world. It has come to an end. And we've been saying that for a long time, but we've been dragging around a dead body. And now the piper has come, and it's time to pay. So I'm going to share with you that recently I wrote a new article called Hospicing Futurity, because I want to propose to you that just like John Elkanny's triple bottom line got co-opted, and that he wrote about this and said, oh my goodness, I created the triple bottom line. It was supposed to be a genetic code, a triple helix that would transform capitalism and its future, and it did not. I want to suggest to you that futures and futures thinking and foresight suffered the same exact fate, and I've seen it. There is brand new conferences that are being held right now that are founded on the co-opting of our future, your future, and my future. As a matter of fact, I wrote in this new article, I used as a quote to begin the article, Jack Handey. You know, you watch Saturday Night Live, amazing quotes by Jack Handey. They're all sort of, supposed to be ridiculous and outrageous and absurd. Here's another one of the Jack Handey, a Hollywood writer's absurd quotes. He said, they say the future is what we make of it. At least that's what they tell people who don't make the future. And I'm telling you, these conferences that we're seeing right now, these futures conferences that we're seeing rising up, are like the end. They're not the beginning of something. They're the end of something. They smell like the end of futurity. They smell like the co-opting of foresight and futures thinking. They stink. And you can walk into these conferences and you can see this massive need to hospice. What is hospicing? It means when I see that something is dying, that I try to show grace and mercy in putting it, sunsetting it, putting it away. Not propping it up, not trying to say, oh my gosh, we found a new way to stretch out its lifespan, but to hospice it. So I believe, and that's what I've written in this article, Hospicing Futurity, that not only do we need to hospice the futures and foresight thinking that we have now, but just like I told you a few minutes ago, I'm not against organizations and governance. I'm not against foresight and futures thinking. Actually, I think it's so powerful. And I think just like Jack Elkin did that about triple bottom line, when it gets co-opted, that really sucks. Sucks. Because it sucks the life out of what futures thinking and foresight can actually be and do. So I just want to read you two little parts of this article that I wrote called Hospicing Futurity, because I want to get to another article here. I told you it's going to be a little bit longer video, but I hope you're hanging with me. If you don't want to watch this video and you've cut it off a long time ago, or you're like, I can't take much more of this, I don't know where this is going, fine. If you want to learn, stick with me. If I want to learn, I'm going to keep going, because we all need to learn together. So in this article, I said, for those who are familiar with my work, you know that I've often critiqued the field of foresight and futures thinking in terms of its focus on siloed object orientation. I got to look at these objects. That's what futuring is about. Look at that thing's rising up over there. Look at that object. Object orientation instead of process. Understanding the longer process, the long arm, the long tail, the long now is so much more important than saying, why did that banana arise? Why did that avocado, I'm looking at bananas over my counter right now. Why did that cell phone arise? Why do we have this? Why do we have AI? It's more important to understand the bigger picture. And so object orientation and forecasting materiality is just so, who cares? Who cares? Who cares? I know right now you're saying organizations care, corporates care. I just told you, who cares? We've got to get there. We've got to get there. We need a collective, who cares? And I'm asking you to join the 3.5%. That's all it takes to change a system. Go look it up, 3.5%. Anachronistic rationality, overheated fascination with trend identification analysis. Trends are everywhere. Not a drop to drink. Not a damn drop to drink. All of these are practices I participate in, of course, yes, but they are nonetheless a manifestation of Cartesian and hyper-Newtonian approaches that do very little to nothing to actually explore the depth of impactful futuring. We need a whole new way of looking at futures, and that starts with a new philosophy that's not just about futures thinking, but the way we see life. So it's not because we're disconnected from nature and animals and life and love and all this because there's too many thoughts in our head. It's because the wrong philosophy has been driving us. And it's a philosophy that does not bring life to us. We know it, but we're holding on to it because our reward system is in this system. And I don't blame a single one of you, not a single one of you. I get it. How do you have a house? How do you buy groceries? How do you get water? How do you get electricity? And if you were just like, that's it, it can all go to hell tonight, you still have a family to feed. You still have the need to put groceries on the table. And so we yield to the system because it rewards us. But it's time for change. It's far past it. And now the piper has come calling and we have to pay. So the only way out is through, not around. There might have been a time, a ways back, to go around. There's no around anymore, it's through. And through doesn't mean you get to keep doing the same thing over and over again. Because that is the definition of insanity. Another Einstein quote. So the rest of this quote just says, I'm not saying that I see foresight and futures thinking as irrelevant or fallacious. To the contrary, I actually believe that a healthy philosophical underpinning futures thinking, one that is freed from the motivation of colonial capitalistic incentives, reveals its beautifully entangled relationship to imaginal anticipation, to unfolding consciousness, that's a part of futures thinking, to symbiotic interconnection, that's futures thinking, transformative evolution, that's futures thinking. That's what Jack Elkington wanted with the TBL. Psychological development and spiritual well-being. And this is back to what I was saying earlier in the video. Being scared of sacredness and spirituality is awful. And the article that I'm about to read you is from my newfound friend, who I think is so amazing, Michelle Shevin. She wrote a brand new article called Possibility Plus Power Equals Plan. And I told her, I didn't mean as a slight, that I totally get why the article's called this. But you read that title, and it's amazing, and it's enough to make you want to read the article, and then you read the article and you think, my God, that title didn't do justice to the power of this article. It's so good. And she definitely needs to write a book on this. And so I'm going to pull in that article in just a moment, too, to help us along our learning journey here. But nevertheless, this all hinges on our willingness to challenge the definitions and expressions that our systems of efficiency and extraction have attached to futures thinking. Let me read that one more time. Our systems of efficiency and extraction have attached themselves to futures thinking, making futures thinking about efficiency and extraction. No, 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 no. No. That's awful. I want you to stop the video right here if you need to and think about that for a moment. That is awful. When you're using futures thinking, building better futures for all, not just people, but kin and planet and cosmos, and it's about efficiency and extraction, we have a serious problem here. And I'm actually calling right now on organizations and governments to be hearing this, not just individuals. Yes, you can run governments and organizations transformationally without extraction and exploitation and mega efficiency. That's not what we run life on. And therefore, organizations are either invalid or they can be run differently. I believe it's the second one. But if you don't believe it's the second one, then they're just invalid. That's your choice. I believe it's the second one. A perspective that offers shallow, short-term rewards based on reinforcing their dominant narratives, exploitative goals, but which is devoid of manifesting the generative treasures that futures thinking actually holds for humanity. There's more to it than meets the eye. And we don't need more of the same old futures thinking that's about robots and AI. I'm tired of it. And surely you're getting there, at least, if you're not fully there. Aren't you tired of it? Come on. Our futures thinking needs to be about relationships, about communion, about planet, about consciousness, about organizational development that's based on all those things, about governance that's based on all those things. That's why you see so many people writing today. That's why Phoebe Tequila started an organization called Moral Imagination. We can run governance on love. We can run our organizations on love. We can. We just need to have the will. If you say we can't, it means you don't have the will. It means I don't have the will. And the last part of this article, I said, it's important to understand that various tools and methods are only an outward reflection of the more important philosophical foundations that define the way that foresight and futures thinking is practiced, whether professionally or in the psyche of the general populace. Our present philosophy, this is what I've been talking about, in all domains and disciplines, is the one that modernity has foisted on us. I don't blame you for it. You were born in it. You've had this foisted upon you. You can be freed from it just as much as anybody else can. We have to make the choice. And you might as well make it now. I mean, if you're not going to make it now, then when? Look around you and look at the system crying out that it's like, it knows it's dying, so it's giving it its all. Now's the time. There's nothing left to hold on to. Oh boy. It runs in the background of all that we do. We can have the best of intentions in our futures thinking. Listen to this. In our mindsets and practices and futures thinking, wanting to develop futures free of harm caused by poverty and climate change and racism, misogyny and xenophobia and resource depletion, authoritarianism, etc., etc., etc. We can have the best of intentions, and our modernity-driven philosophy will still have us playing the role of the caterpillar zombie. Dora Bateson wrote this beautiful poem called The Caterpillar Zombie. You can find it in her book, Combining. But basically, she says the caterpillar, he's munching the leaves and it's going about and doing its business. And then the time comes for it to cocoon, dissolve, and turn into the butterfly. And it's like, yeah, I don't like this idea of dissolving. I don't want to get in a relationship. I'm scared of the dissolving. I like what I had. As a matter of fact, we could eat more leaves exponentially. We could, extract the entire meadow with thousands of caterpillars, a caterpillar army. And the time comes and passes for the caterpillar to have dissolved and turned into a butterfly, making it a zombie. It's dead. It just doesn't know it. Our organizations are dead. Our futures conferences are dead. Our futures organizations are dead. They just act like they don't know it. And I get it. Maybe you're watching this and you're going like, that sounds like you're blaming me. I totally got this. I got this before you did, Frank. Fantastic. Then you're way ahead of me. I probably got some of this from you. I'm probably following you. We're in communion together. I'm speaking to those who are insistent tonight to say all we need is a slight correction and to get things back on path, because modernity has offered us an amazing something. And as Michelle Shevin has said to us already, I just got to interview her this past week, and she said to me, we like to bring forth a story and say, like, actually, we're way better off as a species than we were 100 years ago. What put us in dire straits 100 years ago? Colonial capitalism. And we're better off by the measurements of colonial capitalism. Everybody's making $1 more an hour. Everybody, we've got less people in poverty, whatever that's supposed to mean, even though the world's in abject poverty. Everything's better. No, it's not. The climate's not better. Poverty's not better. Racism's not better. Misogyny's not better. Authoritarian's not better. And the idea that we're just extracting and exploiting is not better is worse. This is actually a message of good news. I bring you good tidings of great joy, the real one. Life transforms. Futures consciousness leads us into transformation. It takes us out of object orientation. This isn't about foresight of trends and things. It's futures consciousness of life. And you're like, oh God, how are we supposed to use that? That's why I started with the Jack Elkington quote. He thought the same thing about TBL. He was like, don't you see, we can apply this to the way that we build organizations. We can apply this to the way that we build governance and all. But you keep saying we can't and scaring people away from it. Don't do that. Don't do that, Frank. Don't do that, Frank. Don't do that, Frank. I had to stop myself. The last part of the article says, in the end, truly impactful foresight and futures thinking requires the willingness to facilitate the death and burial of dominant narratives. As a matter of fact, I would even say it is the utility of foresight and futures thinking to bury futurity, to hospice futurity, and to bury dominant narratives. Like, if you're practicing foresight and futures thinking and it isn't burying dominant narratives, then it's missing its power. That's moral imagination. That's imaginal anticipation. It buries the old. It gives birth to the new. Whereas the future thing is giving birth to the new, instead of saying, like, here's a trend, it's just rising, and this is how much money we'll make from it in the next. Who cares? An embrace of cooperative connection for evolutionary transition, a perception of emerging realities over in-system trends, a universal and symbiotic view of large-scale processes over object orientation, a co-creative embrace of transformation over the future-proofing of our static world, and a deep change of our hearts and our minds and our souls. If Andreotti, who wrote, of course, Hospicing Modernity, is right in saying that we need to hospice modernity, then we will certainly also need a hospice futurity to end the corruption of the dominant system and allow for the birth of emergent systems of transformation and a futures thinking and foresight practice that no longer services the machine of a colonial world. If you read the rest of the article, I show very succinctly how futures is the servant of modernity. Futurity is a servant of modernity. It has been. And this is what these futures conferences are founded on. I hate to say it. I know, go there, take the picture, have fun. I went there too. I'll probably be there again, whatever. But you'll hear me there this time screaming this message. I don't care about that session. I don't care about this session. I don't care. Tell me it is hospicing, futurity, and modernity, and I'll be there. Michelle Shevin, as I said, wrote this incredibly powerful article called Possibility Plus Power Equals Plan. You need to go read it. It's so powerful. I mean, I don't even know what part of it to pick out for you that is most powerful. I've highlighted so much of this. She says, we've been talking about moving from what we're against to what we're for. After all, anti-racism, anti-fascism, decolonialization, these should be the baseline. These are the reactions to ongoing power dynamics of broken stories, adherence to histories that deny our collective humanity while doing daily harm and threatening to all our futures. But defending hard-won progress and rejecting overt anti-humanism on its own terms isn't our only possible strategy, even as we recognize systemic backlash as evidence that it's been working. Alongside the important work of preserving and maintaining what must be carried forward, we can also ask, what are the proactive affirmative futures we're reaching for? What grief must occur before we can imagine them together? What trauma must occur before we can imagine them together? How do we hospice fraternity to get to this place? You cannot have both together at the same time. A lot of the futures thinking that I've seen in the places you'd imagine it happening most insidiously, intelligence agencies, multinational corporations, it all starts with a lie. This is what Michelle Shevin says, so powerful. The formula is to extrapolate from a pattern of events that seems fringed by imagining it moving mainstream. As the Gibson quote goes, the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. And so clients with the resources to avoid getting caught off guard will cast a wide net in sensing potentially relevant signals before they become disruptions, require strategic response. That's foresight. She just laid out in one sentence, that's the definition of foresight, the way it's being practiced in a co-opted modernity. Foresight is part of good strategy. If you're prepared for any likely outcome, you can survive no matter what. And if you want to take advantage of what's coming, it helps to know what possibilities are on the horizon. Given sufficient scale and resources, predictions become plans. That's foresight. I know, I've done it a million times for a million companies. But in this model, events like technological discrimination and oppression and protests arising in response are framed as rare, aberrant, and unexpected. Rather than provoking reflection on hard questions, such signals are instead swept into the tide of trend forecasting. If you didn't hear what she's saying, there's like these amazing things going on in the periphery, what Benita Roy calls complex potential states, and we ignore those because it's efficient for us to ignore them. And so you go to the workshop and they say, AI is going to save the world, AI is going to replace human workers, and you'll save a lot of money, AI is going to do all this stuff, AI is going to make the internet better, AI is going to give you greater efficiency, productivity in your business, AI is going to raise your kids, and it's going to give us better crops, and blah, blah, blah. And they never tell you that AI sucks. And that it's discriminatory, and that it's killing indigenous knowledge, and that it is just another tool of capitalism. You never hear all that. Those are major trends, but those trends get swept under the rug because they don't make companies money. Unless the companies, by the way, said like, well, the way for us to actually be prosperous is to be, put humans and kin and planet and cosmos first, which they could if they wanted to. Next time you go to a futures workshop, tell me what trends aren't there, not the trends that are there. When you read a trend report, 400 pages long and 15 volumes long, given to you at South by Southwest. And it's all tech. I want you not to tell me what trends are in there listed. Tell me which ones aren't. Because that will tell me something about the future. The future is in what's not being said. The future is not being televised. In this way, the routine experiences of those made marginal in our systems are stripped of their power to be transformative conduits of new possibilities as they are folded into the narratives of inevitability. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Through futures planning processes, warning signs become sites for new business development. Did you hear that? This woman is an amazing writer. Warning signs become sites for new business development. I told you that we should never build a metaverse. That's what the book was about. When we wrote that book, that sci-fi book, it was supposed to be about, look, what if there were a future where the metaverse, wouldn't that suck? Let's make a metaverse. Oh gosh, I wrote a book about, way back in the 1950s, the AI, what if it did this, and wouldn't that just be terrible? Yeah, let's make it. Hand and palm. Right now, I know there's some of you watching and like, well, Frank really, everybody should call him. He lost it. No, this is how I am all the time. Most of my videos are very restrained. Come to our retreats, come to our thing. You'll see me actually being this way because it's serious. Because it's serious. Because it's serious. And there's a better way. You just have to have the will. You have to have the will. So I haven't lost it. I'm actually telling you the truth. Here, I get to read from my good friend, Michelle Shevin, brand new. I hope we become good friends. I feel like we quickly became friends. I've made a lot of friends like that this year. Oh, the beautiful Camilla Mazzini Allister, beautiful in soul, of course, is what I meant. When I refer to people as beautiful, I'm talking about their spirits. Wonderful, amazing person. She is just, and her writings, these are the people that are speaking the truth to us. Why are we not listening? Quit running after the bright, shiny object. We need something much deeper. So Michelle finishes by saying, those get folded into the narratives of inevitability through futures planning processes. Warning signs become sites for new business development. Urgent issues are recast as terrain for potential industrial complexes. The fire is warm. Now, listen, I'm not going to do justice to this article because the little parts that I read were about me being on the soapbox here a little bit. She beautifully, I end my article by saying we need hospice modernity, and there's still definitely hope in there because transformation is about hope. She does an even better job than me by saying, look, this is what it means for us to have hope and love and transformation and imagination that is not connected to extrapolation of trends, and that futures needs a reboot. So in the interview that I just did with her on Friday, that won't come out probably for a little while, just the way we've got our newsletters and things scheduled. But I am going to try to just pull clips from it and share them along the way, because I can't wait 2 months for you to hear some of what she said. As a matter of fact, I remember in a part in there where she said, the main thing that's missing from futures thinking. And this is somebody who worked for SRI and the Ford Foundation doing futures for the largest companies in the world, just like we have at TFSX. So we can understand each other very well. We probably work for some of the same companies. And she said, the element that's missing more than anything else that futures needs to focus on is spirituality. And she said, I don't mean religion, and I'm not talking about angels. We went into that. We're talking about the awe and the wonder and the enchantment of life itself. And when we don't understand that, we disassociate from reality. And it's a sickness that I have and you have and we all have. And if you're getting really mad, finally in this part of the video, you're finally getting mad because I just said you're disassociated from reality. We all are. I recognized a long time ago my dissociation from reality. And I look back at my younger life and I go, gosh, it's hopefully an unending, unraveling, and emerging relationship with consciousness. But I know that I didn't have it before, and I see the ravages of dissociation from reality. In my life, I see it in our world, and because I have the right to do this tonight, I will say that I see it in the field of futures and foresight in a huge way, a huge way. So she ends the article just by saying, let me see if I can find the sentence here. Indeed, the end of history did not come to pass. The key trends being tracked back then, namely the singular primacy of neoliberalism, could in retrospect more accurately be called the crumbling of our capacity to imagine a future. And today, amidst collapse all around us, I offer a rallying cry for renewal, the defiantly joyful song of imagining what the future could feel like if we were in it together. God, Michelle Shank, thank you so much for that. And if you've hung to the end of this video, I invite you to join us. April 22nd is our next session of the Dragonfly Journey. You need to go to my.tfsx.com, join the collective, and for the rest of the year, you will get to join live online sessions. The next one's April 22nd, 90 minutes, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The Dragonfly Journey, my.tfsx.com, join the collective. You get access to the Dragonfly Journey. April 22nd, you'll show up, you'll get the Zoom link, you'll be in the group, you can go join the course, and in the course, in between our live sessions, our 90-minute sessions, which are places of love and of safety and of trust, and of healing, and of reflection, and of cooperation that perceives emerging novelty that co-creates transformational realities, and not foresight that you knew before from some conference. It's different. It's what Elkington wanted. It's what Bateson's crying for. It's what Rowson's crying for. It's what Jeremy Johnson's crying for. It's what Dougal Hines crying for. It's what Bayo Kumalafe is crying for. And I'm not saying it's exactly. It's what Indy Johar is crying for. I know that they would probably come and hear some of our stuff and say yes and or yes but. But generally speaking, if any of those voices have resonated with you, Benita Roy, Sophie Strand, these are people that we've interviewed, Adam Cahan, then I invite you to come. And in between our live onlines, which happen every other month, we're in discussion inside of the Dragonfly Journey group at my.tfsx.com, and we're discussing questions and ideas that relate to a new philosophy for foresight, yes, and for the world, so that we go through the meta crisis together, as Michelle Shevin says, and that we would understand that we can imagine a future worth living for. I will see you there. Have a wonderful evening. I love you. Take care.